What is up, guys? It's your boy Rick Under the Weather Cactus, and today Bungie released a brand new gameplay trailer for the upcoming Lightfall expansion, this time showing off the all-new Strand Subclasses and their abilities. Strand is a huge part of the Lightfall DLC, similar to how when Stasis was added to Destiny 2 as an all-new element within Beyond Light. And remember how absolutely busted Stasis was? Well, Strand's looking pretty darn powerful as well. But in addition to this trailer, Bungie also released a press release, so we have some brand new screenshots and information from that we're going to be going over in this video as well. And so, let's get started. Now, first things first, let's look at this trailer. Now, the trailer is going to begin with Osiris teaching your Guardian about Strand, and then it's going to flash to some Strand gameplay, back to Osiris, etc. Now, likely this location where Osiris is kind of teaching you is going to be somewhat similar to how you went to that specific location on Europa, I think it was called the Ziggurat, to slowly unlock your Stasis subclasses within Beyond Light. So it's likely going to work the same way within Lightfall. You unlock bits and pieces of your Strand subclass over time throughout the campaign, quests, and so on. But moving on to that Strand gameplay, we see a new grenade being used here, and it hits the ground and splits apart. So it's behaving pretty similarly to an arc skip grenade, but the difference is that there doesn't seem to be any homing. Instead, each time these three projectiles hit either an enemy or the ground, they just explode with a pretty big radius. Moving on from there, again, we're getting flashbacks with Osiris teaching you. We then see a Titan seemingly in his super, absolutely slashing these Vex. Now, interestingly, in the press release, Bungie actually provides a description of all three of the Strand supers. So let's go over the Titans here. The Titan Berserker subclass, its super is called Blade Fury. Titans weave large blades onto their arms while they roam the battlefield using light and heavy attacks. Light attacks allow Titans to quickly slash enemies and build energy for their heavy attack, in which they swing their blades to launch projectiles that suspend and incapacitate enemies on impact. Wow, really interesting. So we have had supers where there's light and heavy attacks, think the Striker for Arc, but you can kind of just use either attack whenever and it uses up varying degrees of your super energy. This sounds like you actually need to charge up your heavy attacks with light attacks. Very interesting. But next up, we're actually going to see gameplay of what appears to be the Hunter using its Strand subclass swinging around that rope. And so let's go over that description. The Hunter Threadrunner subclass has the Silk Strike super, which says, Hunters weave a rope dart to strike down their enemies. The light attack throws the dart forward to strike a single enemy. Hitting an enemy with the tip of the dart deals bonus damage, and defeating enemies in this manner causes them to explode. The heavy attack swings the rope dart around a large area, damaging all nearby enemies. Wow, so you're actually going to have to aim like this rope and hit enemies with the tip to get that maximum DPS. However, moving on from there, we then see gameplay of a Warlock consuming their Strand grenade to gain presumably some more abilities. Then they're using their weapon here, which kind of just looks like a normal weapon, but they get this precision hit on this Vex, and that, as you can clearly see, causes a Strand ability to take effect that is going to lift up and incapacitate the nearby Vex. So, is this the result of this Warlock consuming their grenade, perhaps adding this ability to whatever weapon they're using? Consume your grenade and the next precision kill you get will cause this effect to take place? Or is this actually just a Strand perk on this weapon here? Just like how we have Chill Clip and Stasis perks, maybe this is something for Strand. If it is, that's going to be insane. Like, get a precision kill and cause nearby enemies to be completely incapacitated, essentially, freezing them akin to stasis. That would be nuts. But we also see the Warlock kind of shooting out multiple different projectiles here. Like, just whopping off one and then the other and then the third, and perhaps that is the ability gained for consuming your grenade, allowing you to shoot these different strand projectiles for a certain amount of time, perhaps. And then we're going to see the Warlock Strand subclass really being shown off here with the super being used. And so you know what time it is, let's go over that description. So the Warlock broodweaver subclass gets the Needlestorm super, which says, floating into the air, Warlocks conjure a wave of piercing strand missiles. After the missiles strike their enemies, they detonate and reweave themselves into threadlings that chase after nearby targets. And we can actually see this effect within the gameplay trailer. After these enemies are hit with the initial volley, then they're going to die here, and these threadlings, which we now know the name for, are going to travel forward and continue hitting additional nearby enemies. So that seems like a pretty insane, ad control super that the Warlock has access to. You get the initial missile strike, and then you get these threadlings for any lingering enemies that survived. Next up, we see a bunch of Dark Cabal, and they're faced with a Titan. The first thing we see is the Titan using their Barricade class ability, and that's actually going to send a wave of strand damage to these nearby Cabal, who are going to be lifted up and incapacitated. And shockingly, look at how many enemies are actually affected by this. Even the turret gets lifted up, for goodness sakes. And then we see the Titan using their super that we already went over the description. A bunch of light attacks, it seems, swinging one enemy to the next. And after a power trailer pose, we then see presumably the heavy attack. So the Titan is going to swing both of their arms and send out those strand projectiles that hit this big bad boss here, doing a ton of damage and also suspending them in air. After that, we see the Hunter come crashing down here, slam the ground, and then suspend nearby enemies. And then the Hunter just kind of gets up. So this seemingly is similar to the Shatter Dive ability. This is just going to be an additional ability, perhaps an aspect within your Strand subclass, hitting down on the ground and suspending nearby enemies. And again, that looks very effective. We then see a melee being used here, which is going to hit this first Dark Cabal and then ricochet to another nearby suspended Dark Cabal, and then seemingly it looks like potentially ricochet again, because the Hunter actually turns to the right, kind of the opposite direction, and this thing seemingly has been absolutely going around all these enemies, and in fact to the point where the Hunter catches it again. So perhaps this is going to let you melee ricochets between all these enemies, and then it comes back to you, and if you're maybe facing it or press the melee button again, or just automatically does it, you get your melee back. Does that perhaps rejuvenate your melee energy, letting you use it again? This seems like a pretty nutty melee ability. Now, right after that, we see the Hunter utilizing the grapple ability. Remember, the Strand kind of grapple is going to replace your grenade. So what you're seeing here is basically a certain Strand grenade, allowing this Hunter to get up to this high ledge and then activate their super. And again, we went over that description so we can see the Hunter here utilizing a light attack and shooting that rope at this enemy, directly at them, hitting them with the point and then destroying them. And these precision attacks are actually pretty new. In the other trailers, it's the really wide circle heavy attack that we keep seeing. After that, we see some footage of the Cabal landing on Neptune and the city. We see Guardians interacting with Strand. We then see what looks to be a grenade being used, I think, by this Titan here, and it's like a Strand bolas, I forget exactly what that thing is called here, but it's going to hit the ground, start spinning around, and suspend these nearby enemies. After that, we see a Warlock utilizing their class ability, putting down a healing rift, And then that causes all these threadlings to spawn, which are going to rush forward and hit all of these nearby Vex, which seems insane. Like, if you could have this amount of power, this amount of damage output for putting down your class ability, which you want to do anyways, that's really nutty. But actually, if you pay attention to the very beginning of this clip, you can see this Warlock actually has these like strand orbs floating around them. And then when they activate their, healing rift, these orbs kind of turn into these threadlings. So perhaps this Warlock previous to this point was getting kills or doing whatever and accumulating these orbs. Perhaps that's an aspect, like as you get kills, as you get multi-kills, you get these orbs, and then when you use your class ability, you turn these strand orbs into threadlings, or maybe if you use any ability, you turn these orbs into threadlings for like additional damage. That would be very, very cool. Now, after that, we actually see gameplay of a Titan here, and this Titan is going to yeet like this strand ball. So perhaps like this is a kind of grenade, but in the exotic trailer, we actually saw that the exotic catalyst for the Quicksilver Storm spawned this strand ball, and it's actually called a Tangle. So perhaps similar to the exotic trailer where you see someone actually pick up the Tangle and then throw it later, this is what you're seeing. Maybe this isn't like a grenade. There might just be a grenade to throw a Tangle, but maybe this was spawned in some other way, and then the Titan picked it up, throws it, and we actually see the hunter grapple to this Tangle and be yoinked across this divide to then go up and start schmacking some Cabal. Right after that, again, we see the hunter melee being used here for a second time. It is going to hit and ricochet between all these enemies, completely turning around, and just like we saw before, the hunter is going to catch it again. And actually, if you pay very close attention, the first enemy that gets killed by this melee as the camera pans around seemingly spawned a Tangle you can see floating here. And so again, that's some more synergy. Now this Tangle can be picked up like we saw with the Titan, yeeted, grappled to, all that stuff. That's kind of the synergies that you can expect with Strand. Guys, that then ends the trailer. Wow, like this is pretty insane. Just all the different ways that you can chain things into other things, how Strand interacts with the environment, being able to grapple on Tangles that you're spawning from other abilities. All that seems very, very different than anything we have right now. The thing that always blows me away when I watch these trailers, guys, is just how often enemies are incapacitated. They're floating in the air thanks to Strand abilities. How is that different in function than freezing them solid with stasis? And doing that is one of the most powerful things you can do in the game, especially in high level content. Freezing an enemy solid so they're not attacking you back is nuts. Strand seems to have that same ability, but perhaps even more so. Guys, that is it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.